Welcome to another edition of College Basketball Net Profit on Pub Sports Radio. Tuesday, November 29th. Ian Cameron and Conor Mack ready to break down a Tuesday night college basketball card highlighted by a slew of Big Ten ACC Challenge games. In fact, pretty much all the marquee games, for the most part, I think there's one or two exceptions, but for the most part, they're ACC Big Ten Challenge games. We will begin with one. It's Maryland and Louisville. To get things going here. Maryland 12 and a half point road favorites in this game. 135 and a half being the total in this game. I definitely consult with, people that I really respect in terms of other college basketball bettors that, do a pretty good job year in, year out, capping the sport, betting the sport. And I know more than one that thinks this is the right buy low spot for Louisville at getting plus 12 and a half. For me, that's not the case. For me, this is a horrendous basketball team that needs to show me they can be better before I'm ready to back them. Their guard play is terrible. Defensively, they've been rough, although they've tried to hang in there best they can, but they can't overcome their lack of offense and their poor shooting, poor guard play, turnovers galore, and Maryland will press you a little bit. That's the thing, and I don't even know if this is stylistically a good matchup for a bad Louisville team right now. So, you could say value all you want. We're talking about a piss-poor, struggling, reeling basketball team in this Louisville Cardinals that's really poorly coached. I think we're seeing that Kenny Payne may be in over his head here as head coach of this Louisville team. I laid the points with Maryland. I've cashed a bunch of tickets. They haven't covered a point spread yet this year, not only 0-6 straight up, but 0-6 against the spread. For me, we keep riding the fade Louisville train until it crashes. It hasn't crashed yet. You could argue this is not a bargain on Maryland, but I'm rolling with it anyway. What do you think here, Conor?
I don't want anything to do with the game. Yeah, I don't know if it's enough value here with Louisville. They are back at home. You think they can at least score a little bit better. This team, man, I bet they got in the mid 30s in that game last week. It was rough to watch. But they have just not been good. I think Maryland's pretty good, but the hefty number here. If I had to, I'd take Maryland too, but I want nothing to do with this one. This one's just a dead pass for me.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. If I had been fading Louisville's ass every game, I'd probably lay off tonight. But I've basically been against them every single game this year. So I figure we've already got like 6 wins in the bank. If I lose one, so be it. I drop one finally. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I mean, is this basketball program gone this bad? Are they this fucking bad? I don't know, maybe. We will see. I mean, it's still early in the season, so hopefully they get a little bit better.
Now, they haven't rebounded from the Rick Pitino disaster at the end of that whole regime. That was bad. Chris Mack was a flop, and that was a guy that did good stuff at Xavier, and he even couldn't get things going here at Louisville. So, yeah, definitely issues with this program, and I'm fading them until proven otherwise. Penn State and Clemson. We've got Clemson here, 2-point home favorites, 131.5 being the total in this game. I almost bet Penn State here, but I didn't. Because to me, they're playing better, but they've not played a true road game yet. They've played some neutral court games, Virginia Tech, Furman, Colorado State on the road, and they actually performed pretty well. They beat Furman, pretty impressive win, beat Colorado State, lost a tough one to Virginia Tech where they fell behind early and they battled back and almost came all the way back to beat Virginia Tech in that game. They played good basketball. They've been shooting the ball extremely well. I didn't know Penn State was going to be able to fill it up like this, but ninth in the country from 3-point range. Their perimeter shooting's been absolutely phenomenal here for Penn State. Jalen Pickett has been terrific. Seth Lundy. They've definitely got multiple weapons on the offensive end, shooting the ball extremely well. Clemson, I always say they've got Chase Hunter. Hunter Tyson's capable, but beyond that, there's a big drop-off in this Clemson team. I'm not a Brad Brownell guy. As everybody knows, there's a free throw edge here for Penn State as well. Very good free throw shooting. So is Clemson, but it's a slight edge for Penn State there. I want to back Penn State, but I don't love this spot where I see, you're getting 2 points. You're playing on the road for the first time. Although that, to be honest with you, I would still look toward Penn State before I look toward Clemson. Don't know if I'll bet it. Probably won't, but I do lean Penn State here. Anything here, Conor? Penn State, Clemson?
Yeah, I didn't have much in this one either, but I've been impressed with Penn State. I like to use them last year, and you mentioned it early on right now in the year, only 5-6 games, but they've shot it unreal, like you talked about. From three, their assist to turnover, effective field goal, all that good shit that we look up has been top 20 in all those categories. If they stay hot, with Pickett, Lundy, and etc., I think they're in this game. It just seems like it's short. This seems like you could get 4.5. Clemson was playing a little bit better basketball the last few years. But, in the end, I'm going to be off. But I'd like to take Penn State here.
You and I both. I mean, we're both leaning Penn State. I might sprinkle a small bet on it. I probably will. I'm a high volume guy. What's a quarter unit bet on Penn State? I might end up pulling the trigger on it because I definitely trust. I like Shrewsbury better than Brownell as a coach too. So I think I'd probably give them a little bit of a coaching edge here in this as well. William and Mary, Bill and his bitch, as I like to call them, taking on NC State. NC State 21-point home favorites here. Total's been moved up to about 146.5. That's more what I'm looking at here is the total in this game. NC State certainly is a team I like to bet overs with. Push pace, push tempo. That's the Kevin Keats way. And you look at their numbers, they've trended over the total so far this season. William and Mary's not quite the team is willing, I should say, to run and gun necessarily with NC State, but they're one of those teams that falls into that category of if they're playing a better team, a team that's superior to them, they'll basically play the pace that team wants to play. So I think they'll end up playing toward NC State's preferred tempo, preferred pace in this game, and you'll see this game probably end up having a good chance to get, up and down the basketball court here at a pretty solid clip. So when it's all said and done, push comes to shove, I think we get into the 150s here. This game goes over the total. Keep in mind, William and Mary is a moderate tempo team, actually below average. They're not a snail, but they don't play fast. But they are a better offensive team than they are defensively. They can shoot. They've got some weapons on the perimeter. They've got a couple of bigs on inside that can score around the rim. But their defense is flawed, 318th in the country in defensive efficiency. So even though William and Mary is going to want to slow it down a little bit, I don't think they're going to get too many stops in this game against NC State. NC State looking to run. So I like over 146.5 here. Conor, anything here?
Yeah, I don't mind the overlook here, especially if William and Mary can keep shooting it well like they have. Because we know NC State, I mean, they should be in the 80s easily in this game, mid 80s for sure. The way they push it. And I thought NC State's played well this year. I'd lean with them to lay it. I just don't love over 20 here, but they should beat William and Mary pretty handily here, just to lean to the Wolfpack.
Yeah, and keep in mind, William and Mary just played Pitt. Pitt's not a fast-paced offensive team, but gave up 80 to them, and the game got to 144. Now you're playing an NC State team, that's easily scoring into the high 70s pretty much every. They've done it against some pretty good defensive teams. Look at the Dayton game, the Butler game, and those teams want to slow it down, and they still got to 76 points, NC State, in both of those games. So I think this is definitely a decent value with the over. I have NC State. When I think NC State totals, I think more toward 150, 152. I usually don't think 146.5 we get something that low, but I think we can take advantage of it.
I agree. I think, a team like Virginia Tech can get to 94. I think that should be similar here. NC State's on just pretty good here. They should get there.
All right, Syracuse and Illinois, another ACC Big Ten Challenge matchup here. Illinois 12-point home favorites here in Champaign, 144.5 the total in this game. This kind of like, it's not Maryland, Louisville, the sequel, but, Syracuse has been underwhelming. They've struggled a bit. They've lost to St. John's and Butler back-to-back games. They had a loss at home against Colgate earlier this year as 80-68. Loss at home at the Carrier Dome as 6.5-point favorites. So they've really had a tough time. And 1-4 ATS their last 5 games as well. Now they got to take on this very, very good Illinois team that's played some good basketball to start the year. They played 2 really good teams on the neutral court tournament they just had last week. They beat UCLA. Very impressed. We were both on Illinois in that game, Conor and I, against UCLA, 79-70. Then they played Virginia in the final, 70-61 loss, but no shame in that. We know Virginia's an elite team. And then they came back home and they just laid the wood toward Lindenwood, 92-59. No, I like this Illinois team quite a bit. And look, you think about a team that's lost Kofi Coburn and Corbello and a couple of really key cogs from the great team they had last year, but they've been able to fill the void very nicely, if you ask me, the Illini. And when you look at Sky Clark, the way he has played for Illinois, He's been good. He's given them a little bit of a jolt at the point guard spot for them. It's been impressive to see, and they're just getting the good contributions all around. It's more of a balanced attack now when you look at Illinois, what they get from Sky Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., transferring in, nice addition, RJ Melendez, Matthew Mayer, who's been around forever. A couple of really nice nice additions via the portal from Brad Underwood for this basketball team. And it's really made them a team that, to be honest, there's not much of a drop-off from the team we saw last year, even losing a Coburn and a Corbello from that group last year. So very impressed with Illinois. Not really looking to step in front of them, but you are laying 12, and Syracuse isn't chopped liver. Okay, I know they've struggled. I know they've had their tough times early in the season. They've taken their lumps, but here's the thing. In the losses, Bryant lost by 1, Colgate lost by 12, which is bad. But, they haven't lost by more than this margin. And then they took St. John's, who's played very well themselves this season, to overtime and lost by 7. So, to me, there's value a little bit on Syracuse here, plus 12, after their recent struggles. But the key is, are they going to be able, to hold off this Illinois team? Because defensively, we think of this team as being able, with that 2-3 zone, to maybe be able to shut off the inside and defend the 3 when they're on their game, but they're not doing that right now. Yeah. Syracuse, they've been shredded along the perimeter. Illinois is a 61st ranked perimeter offense this year, 37.7% from three-point range, and that's a tough matchup disadvantage to overcome. So at the end of the day, while I think there's value in the number on Syracuse, I'm not sure I trust their current form, and I'm not sure I trust the matchup here, which I don't think is a great one for the Orange. So it leaves me out of the game entirely. What do you think here, Conor? Syracuse, Illinois.
Yeah. I've been looking at this all day. I don't know if I can get on Syracuse. I thought Illinois has been pretty good. You mentioned Shannon. I think he is the guy on that team, but you mentioned the others, Epps and Clark and all that. They've been solid as well, but I think he's the big key there. And their offense is humming. I see big money on this under going down. I see this number with these two teams, though. I want to look over. I don't know if it gets there, and I don't know if I get there in the end, because I don't know how good. You mentioned that Syracuse, this defense, I watched it, isn't very good at all. But Mintz should be back. They only have a couple players, and it seems like there's a big drop-off scoring-wise with Syracuse. He got ejected in that Bryant game, but he'll be back tonight. I lean over, and I lean the points with Syracuse. I just don't love it.
I'm with you there. I mean, it's Syracuse definitely value, but I don't love their form. And I'm not stepping in front of Illinois right now. They're bet on or pass for me right now. Although, again, you're getting no bargain here necessarily. All right, next up on the slate, it is Missouri and Wichita State. Missouri, 2.5-point road favorites, 139.5 the total. There's only one concern I have here for Missouri, is that they've faced a little bit of a weaker schedule so far. That's number one. Number two is they haven't played a true road game, but they look damn impressive. And not always am I going to say, you know what, you faced a lot of weak teams. You've looked really good. I'm going to trust you here on the road in your first true road game of the season. But I'm also not very high on Wichita State. I think the way Missouri's played, even though you could say light schedule so far, and even though it's their first true road game of the season, I still think they're good enough to go into Wichita and win this game. So I'm on Missouri here, money line, minus 140 in this game is the price that I laid. I think they're going to get the job. Certainly offensively, they've been very, very special. And look, it's a totally rebuilt roster as well for Wichita State. Let's not forget that. They're kind of starting over from scratch this year. And Isaac Brown even said it, the coach, we're still trying to figure our shit out, and it's going to take a while, he said. So when you're hearing the coach have a quote like that, Conor, that, hey, it's going to take a while for us to get this team where we want it to be, that means you stay away. Right when it's coming straight from the coach's mouth that we're not very good right now. We're not going to be good right away. It's going to take us time. Wichita might be a team that now they're not great, but maybe January and especially February and into March, we do see them get better and play better. And maybe then we back Wichita a little bit. But right now I'm not doing that. And I think Missouri's been plenty impressive enough. Even though they're going on the road for the first time, I think they win this game. I'm going with the Tigers here on the money line. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot here. I haven't been crazy impressed with Missouri. I mean, they just haven't played anybody. And now you mentioned this is their first road game. I do like college. I like Brown. Both those guys are great scorers. for Missouri, and they've played nobody, but they've scored in the 90s. It seems about just about every game so far this year against these bad teams. We know the Shockers here at home. It seems like if they're in the game, this game should be in the 60s. I don't think they want to get up and down with Missouri here. So total's interesting, and the way I don't think Wichita obviously is a great shooting team. So I lean under a little bit. I haven't bet this one, but I lean Missouri in the under if I had to bet here.
All right, good stuff. Next up, as we continue along here on the College Basketball Net Profit Show, we've got Baylor and Marquette. What a great non-conference game this is here. A little Big 12 versus Big East action. We've got Baylor 6.5. Actually down. Wow. Sorry, my bad. We're down to 5 now. 5.5 point road favorites with Baylor in this game. 155 the total. I agree with it. Marquette, a dangerous home underdog, and I'm going to be adamant, and I think we talked Baylor already a couple of times on this show earlier this year. They are 5-1, but if you look at every single Baylor defensive number, whether it's points per game, field goal percentage, three-point percentage defense, not even close to the numbers we saw last year. Not even close. This is not a team that's playing the Baylor level of defense we've become accustomed to, that national championship contender level defense. They're not. Teams are able to score on Baylor this year. They have had some tough nights in terms of defense, like Virginia, shredding them. 86 points when they lost 86-79 to the Virginia Cavaliers. Virginia shot 25 of 45 from the field in that game. I didn't think they played great defensively against UCLA, even though they beat them 80-75 in that game. So they, in their two big step-up in class games, were far from Baylor-like, at the defensive end of the basketball court. And that's concerning when you got a Marquette team that can flat out score. They can fill it up, at the offensive end. So, and that's a great point in the chat by Slow Jams here. You're seeing that Shaka Smart knows Baylor very well, coached in the Big 12 before with Texas, of course. So he knows, the kind of style that they're going to employ. He does have a long-term good track record as an underdog, and especially a home underdog does Shaka Smart as well. So I definitely like the Marquette side here in this one at plus. I got +7 for crying out loud. I jumped on it like real early. Actually, it was overnight. I bet it. I said, this number looks a little bit high, and it's down to 5.5 now, but I think Marquette's right in this game start to finish. We have a competitive game, and I think we have a chance here for even Marquette to threaten to win the game in outright fashion. They're, I think, a very good offensive ball movement right now. They're sharing it around. They basically have been able to force turnovers in bunches, and Baylor's not been valuing the basketball nearly as much. I know they've still got Cryer and George. Keontae George is going to be a big-time player for them. Cryer's great. Flagler's been there for a while. Good Baylor team offensively still, but they're not playing that same defensive caliber early in the season. So give me Marquette here. I lean over the total as well, but it's a high number, 155 for a Baylor game. Not high for Marquette. Marquette will push pace, but for Baylor, 155 is pretty high, but it's still over or pass for me. What do you think here, Connor? Good matchup here, Baylor-Marquette.
Yeah, this game should be good. That's a good number if you got the 7.5. I still think it's fine if you got 6 or above. Now it's basically 5.5, 5s everywhere. I lean Marquette a little bit as well. You mentioned Baylor's defense. Marquette's like, all right, defending the 3, but they've given up a good amount of points. I think they're around 115 in the country because obviously they push on offense. I think they need to get better, a little bit better defensively. So that's why we have this high total. But this might be just too high. This is a ton. Still might not get there with all the points they score. So in the end, I lean Marquette. I'm not gonna give it out now at 5.5, but I think they can cover here. I think Baylor. We'll see if this defense gets better as the year goes on. Yep. With all these veteran guys and this team, because I think they're loaded. So we'll see.
Definitely. Offense hasn't been their issue. It's been the other end of the court. We'll see if that can continue to improve as the season goes on. All right, another ACC Big Ten Challenge game now, Georgia Tech and Iowa. Iowa, 15, 16-point home favorites here. The total, 150 pretty much. This is definitely an interesting matchup in that you've got Iowa, explosive offensively as always, still a little bit shaky offensively, although I say this, their defenses look better than it has in recent years early in the season, which is good, until they played TCU. And then it looked a little shaky once again over the weekend. But you got them off that loss. I think you're going to want to see them bounce back here back home against a Georgia Tech team that I certainly am not trusting Georgia Tech here. I'm not overly looking to back this team early in the season. I know their record's a little bit better than we thought it might be at this point, 4-2, but they lost by 24 points to Marquette, lost to Utah, and don't be fooled by the 4-point final 4-point deficit in that game. They were trailing by double digits most of the way, and then they got through the back door late. This is going to be, I think, a rough night for Georgia Tech, now playing this Iowa team that's coming off that 79-66 setback against TCU. I mean, when you look at Iowa, Chris Murray has been absolutely terrific. The son of Fran, Patrick McCaffrey, double-digit score, who had an off night against TCU. You'd think back home he's going to have a much better performance here. Josh Pastner complaining about his team's execution, blaming himself for not having them in a better position to win in their last game. Well, it's going to take a lot for them to win this one because their offense is really rough. And their defense has actually been not bad, but you also look, they have not faced anyone of the caliber of Iowa at the offensive end. So it's one of those games where it's a clear pass for me. I do not want Georgia Tech, but I'm never comfortable, never laying 15 with Iowa. With that great offense, yes, but that defense, it's been better so far, but I don't want to be laying 15 on a night where Iowa brings that Ole non-existent defense. And man, we can see that from this team often throughout the course of the Fran McCaffrey era. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, I think Iowa wins here. And will Georgia Tech defense, make a difference in this one? I think you look at Iowa, their team total, because I don't want to lay this either. This seems like a 13-point win or something all over it.
Like Virginia Tech, Minnesota last night, and Minnesota just creeps through the back door at the end. I worry something like that, some shit like that with Georgia Tech tonight.
Yeah, but I like Iowa. I think they play better, after that bad loss to TCU. Bounce back here at home. It's just, a little rich here, at 15.5.
Yeah, a little bit rich. All right, we got two more games on the marquee section of the show. Both of them Big Ten ACC Challenge games as well. Next up, Wake Forest, Wisconsin. We've got the Wisconsin Badgers 6-point home favorites here at the Kohl Center. 130.5 the total. I like Wake here plus the points. I told you many times last year on the show and this year as well. I like Steve Forbes as a coach. I like this Wake program. I think they're definitely improving. I think they're going to be upper half of the ACC. And if things really go well for them, they could be top 3 or 4 in the ACC. That's the highest of the ceiling for them. But you got to shoot for the stars. And this is definitely a program that's getting better. I'm not ready to trust Wisconsin here in this spot, laying 6, 7. It opened 7, actually. It's down to 6. They're coming off the neutral court tournament, 3 games at the Imperial Arena down in, Bahamas, Cayman Islands, Riviera Maya. It was one of those locations where Wisconsin was. The long travel back, from that neutral court tournament. That's a spot where I don't trust teams in. Talked about it with Arkansas last night, my best bet winner with Troy. Part of that was Arkansas coming back off a long trip, into the islands, into the nice warm weather, coming back from that. Well, so was Wisconsin. Now they're back to the cold climate of Madison, Wisconsin here for this game against Wake Forest. I don't love the situational spot for Wisconsin. I don't like their offense enough. A lot of it goes through Tyler Wall, and they're still looking for those consistent second, third options. I mean, you're laying 6 points here with a team that only scored 60 against Stanford, 56 against Green Bay, 43 against Dayton, and 64 against USC. Those are the kind of point totals that you're scoring that make it difficult to win and cover as favorites. And I like this Wake team. They're undervalued. They're well coached with Forbes. Give me Wake here, plus the points. I think it's a competitive game. I wouldn't even rule out them going into Wisconsin winning the game. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, this is the classic here at home, right at this number 6. The 2 possessions, a little more than that. Seems like they could just cover this or not. You know what? Wake's taken care of these bad teams, but I have not been impressed. Utah Valley on the road, took them to OT. I didn't like them in that Loyola game. I didn't think they'd lose. Loyola beat them. I still think they have problems defensively, does Wake Forest. Problem is Wisconsin, I think they've been pretty good. The 1-point game to Kansas that they lost. They're not a team I love to lay points with, but I could see them winning by 8, in this one, or by 5. What did they beat SC by 5 last game, I think? It was like 64-59. I'd still lean under. Wake wants to score and doesn't have a great defense, but a Wisconsin game, slow. Even here, right around 130, I'd look to the under.
All right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Lean toward the under. The thing is, too, we're talking about Wisconsin, the 355th ranked field goal percentage in college basketball. There's 363 teams. So to be 355 in field goal percentage, Wisconsin offensively, that's not great. And that's what you have to overcome here. And you got to lay 6 against a capable Wake in a negative spot because they're coming back from the warm weather climate there and that neutral court tournament. So I think situationally and point spread value, it both lines up nicely here with Wake Forest in this game. And I believe Wake Forest, too, let me just make sure I get this right. Yes, they're a terrific free throw shooting team. So Wisconsin's actually pretty good at the line, too, but Wake's even better, 75.8% free throw shooting team, the Demon Deacons. So I think they're in this game tonight against the Badgers on the road. All right, final game of our marquee section, another Big Ten ACC matchup, Virginia and Michigan. We've got Virginia here, 4-point favorites, 129 being the total in this game. Great matchup here. It really should be. Virginia, the thing I want to watch for is I want to see how this offense does going on the road against a pretty solid and good Michigan team because their offense is actually really impressed at times this year, Virginia. I mean, we're not always accustomed to seeing the Cavaliers put up the kind of numbers and shooting percentages that they have so far early in the season. And during this 5-0 start, they put up 70 in a win against Illinois, 86 against Baylor, 89. Monmouth's bad, but still 89 in that game. They've been consistent, and this is a slow-paced team. This is a team that doesn't have as many possessions in their games because of the style they play, and they're still getting, mid-70s and even the 80s in some of these games, the kind of numbers that Virginia usually doesn't get. So they look very efficient offensively so far. 29th in the country field goal percentage, number 5 in the country in terms of three-point percentage. Definitely been impressive to see how they are shooting the basketball early in the season. Jaden Gardner, who they got prior to last year, the East Carolina transfer, has been very nice for them. And got a very good performance last game with 26 points, was very solid in that one. Caden Shedrick has been solid for them, no question. Lots to like about Virginia and what they've been able to do offensively, and they, as always, remain pretty stout defensively, 57.6 points per game. Their three-point defense has been a little bit suspect. Not saying it's been bad, but it hasn't been terrific for Virginia. So I guess that's the one little flaw that you could say they have. Can Michigan exploit it? I don't know. Michigan hasn't been necessarily shooting the three ball all that great. So it's kind of weird where you've got Virginia's offensive strength, playing into, a little bit of a strength of Michigan and vice versa. So makes it a tricky game to look at here. Virginia, when you look at the start that they've had, this is going to be for them their first true road game, but they did play Baylor. They did play Illinois. And when you look at Michigan here, Conor Mack, they had that bad loss. Still don't know how they lost to Arizona State the way they did. They barely escaped Ohio. They had a less than impressive, 10-point win at home against a totally rebuilding Jacksonville State program. To barely beat Eastern Michigan as well.
Mm-hmm.
They had the lot. They've had some questionable performances, Michigan, facing a schedule that hasn't been as tough as what Virginia has faced. So usually I say, I try to make a case for the home dog when I see this kind of point spread. Not me here. I actually lean Virginia, -3, -4. I think they're playing well, and I think they've played some really tough competition, like a Baylor, like an Illinois. That is going to have Virginia ready, I think, for a game on the road here against Michigan in Ann Arbor. And look, the Chrysler Center's a decent home court. This is not a home court that if you're a road team, you're quaking in your boots playing at Michigan on their home floor. You're not. It's not that kind of environment like a Fog Allen or a Cameron Indoor Stadium or, one of these real raucous, tough, strong home courts. It's not like that at Michigan. They care about Jim Harbaugh right now in the Big Ten championship game on Saturday for the football team. They're not into basketball yet. It's too early, I think. So I like Virginia here a little bit, -4. What do you think here, C-Mac? We'll let you get your connections right there.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, this Michigan team has not impressed me at all since the Arizona State game. I watched all of that. The Ohio, they just squeaked it out, and then Jackson State just by 10. I lean always Virginia game. I've been impressed by them so far to the under at least a little bit. Michigan too hasn't been scoring great. Their tempos in the 200s. They haven't shot it well. To me, it's this Hunter Dickinson. I know Jet Howard's been pretty good, on the wing, but I think this could be tough for Michigan score. And I know Virginia, I think, will want to kind of slow it down, but I don't know how great Michigan's defense is going to be. Virginia's been scoring it nicely so far this year. Tough one for me, but I'd lean under in this one.
Yeah. I mean, they expected more out of Terrence Williams II. This Kobe Buffkin kid, they expect to be pretty good for Michigan, but they've not exactly lit it up here early in the season. Rely a lot on those two guys you mentioned, Jet Howard, and of course the big guy who's the leader of the team now pretty much. He's been there forever now, Hunter Dickinson. So, but again, they need a little bit more contributions from other sources, not getting that right now. And like I say, I think Virginia, when you play Baylor and Illinois, you're ready. And strength of schedule matters, I think, now when you're starting to get into some of these Big Ten ACC challenge matchups, you want to see strength of schedule. Have you played anybody coming into these games? And Virginia's played as tough as it gets. You got Baylor and Illinois on your schedule already that you've played. You should be toughened up for a matchup like this against Michigan.
Yeah, I don't love this on the road, but I think it's Virginia or nothing, like you mentioned. This would be a lot better, 1.5, 2.5, but even 4, I still think they can go in there and win. Michigan just doesn't seem right now.
All right, there it is. That's the marquee games. It's question time, Q&A. If you've got a question about a game we did not get to, put it in the chat and we will answer it. CMAC, are there any games that we didn't talk about yet that you want to mention?
No, there's just a couple of games that I went through that I have some leans on here that I might get to. Old Dominion, Charleston, I'll be on the over there. I got it earlier at 146.5, but 148, I don't mind that either. I think you still have a little bit of room for the over in that one. I like UMKC. I know this is a team I don't want to lay points with, but Idaho State's not very good too. As long as I was thinking this game's under 5, it's at 5. I think they can take care of business. So I lean there. And then back to it, they played a couple teams where their total went over, but I think against UMass, a team that struggled to score, I'd be on the under, South Florida, especially at 133 in that game.
All right, there we go. Good stuff from Conor Mack, some of the games that he likes for this card. I'll throw out some of mine that we did not talk about. I'm on Furman and App State over 142. I like that. Furman, just a great offensive team, just so freaking efficient right now. And App State, actually, I think, they'll be able to put up enough points that game to go up and over 142. I like Duquesne. The numbers climbed already, but Santa Barbara's been kind of an up and down team this year. The Gauchos out of the Big West, they're expected to be one of the better teams in that conference, but they've been underwhelming. So I really like what I've seen out of Duquesne. Keith Dam brought a good coach there, play good defense, West Coast to East Coast trip for UCSB. For the Gauchos, I agree totally with that line going up. I thought when it opened, it was -2 was way too short on that one. I like what I've seen out of Duquesne a lot. Lost some line value, but at -4, I would still rock with the Dukes, the Duquesne Dukes in that game against UCSB. UMass, I like them just to win the game against South Florida. I know it's on the road, but I fade South Florida anytime they're being asked to win a game. I don't trust that offense. UMass, if UMass plays like they did against Towson, I remember in that game early in the season, they could absolutely lose this game. But I think they'll find a way on the road. The Minutemen, I'll take them money line against South Florida. Charlotte and Davidson, great contrast here. Good offensive team. Charlotte's been a surprisingly good defensive team this year. What's going to win out? It's getting to the point now where Davidson is getting more in range. I wasn't ready to lay 6 with Davidson, but Davidson now -4. I'm more interested now in them now. I think the line move towards Charlotte's a little too much now. I haven't bet it yet, but I might pull the trigger with a small bet on Davidson now that it's down to -4. I laid 7.5 with Southern Miss against Montana. Southern Miss has been a way under the radar team. Very impressive, very solid so far this year. Montana's been, other than a performance here and there, Montana's just been very disappointing so far this year, the Montana Grizzlies. And I don't know how their offense is going to execute against that Southern Miss defense, which has been pretty damn impressive early in the season. I think it can get to the point where Southern Miss can extend the margin and win by close to double digits, if not double digits in this game. So Southern Miss -7.5 against Montana. I think the total in Idaho State UMKC, Conor mentioned that game is a little light. I would look over the total in that one. Uh, I wanted to back Tarleton State, but I always say with them, I'd rather have them as a dog, not a favorite, even though I think Weber's a disaster right now. Total disaster. I don't see how Weber scores the basketball against that Billy Gillespie defense tonight. Maybe you look at Weber State team total under if you don't want to lay the points with Tarleton, but I don't see that offense working tonight in that game there. I'm on the over with LIU, Brooklyn, St. John's. Pretty easy decision. LIU is going to play with pace. We know St. John's does. St. John's will play fast. I think that game can get over 153. Long Island University and St. John's. Took a little small shot with Bellarmine, plus 26 against Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's got some big games coming up. Bellarmine is just this little engine that could, all right? They're good enough. They're scrappy enough. They're feisty enough defensively to just hang in there. That's all I'm asking. Lose by 23, lose by 24, lose by 22. I'll be happy. That's all you need to do. I think they
real quick. They hung in against Kentucky, UCLA. I think they got the cover there too the other day. Yep. Lost by 21. I think it's just a little rich. They have the back door open too with them because they can hit some shots, and that's what I think could maybe keep them within that number.
I agree. I think Bellarmine plus the points worth a look there. And what else did I was on my card that I? Oh yeah, Queens and Bowling Green over the total. That total's already gone up, but it's gone up for a reason. Queens plays really fast. Bowling Green plays more offense than defense, and I think you'll see points aplenty in that game. So Queens Bowling Green over 153. I like that. Someone asking in the chat, Albany and American University. I kind of like Albany there, actually. I know you mentioned maybe we lay the points with American U. Albany might be a little bit undervalued now because they had the season starting with a bunch of guys injured or suspended, and they got off to this little bit of a rough start, the Great Danes of Albany. I'm not saying they've been great since then, but they've at least put together a couple of more competitive performances. American's been solid, no doubt, 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. But again, a lot of it has come against some absolutely brutal competition. And again, we've got a situation where Albany strength of schedule advantage is in their favor. Like Siena's a good Metro Atlantic team. Northern Iowa's a solid team. You played Austin Peay, decent team in the OVC. St. Joe's. I mean, their schedule to this point has been a little bit tougher than Americans. So maybe it has them ready as they, and meanwhile, American's been very impressive, but they've literally played nobody. So, and Albany, I think the point spread value is shifting to their direction after a couple of suspensions and injuries early in the season that were hurting them personnel wise. So I actually like Albany a little bit from a value standpoint there at plus 4.5. Anything there, Connor?
No, I have nothing. Someone mentioned in the chat, hey, just keep rolling with it until it was Houston. I take it first half, even, again today. So I just saw that, but I don't even have to mention that until it loses or we get deeper against better teams. I think it keeps winning.
So I'm not stepping in. And look, I don't think Houston was thrilled with that sleepwalk against Kent State the other night. I mean, that was not a pretty performance, especially offensively, but defense did its thing. And that's what happens when you don't bring your A game, you still find a way to win. That's what Houston did against Kent State, 49-44. But I don't think Kelvin Sampson and I don't think any of the players, Sasser and the rest of them, are going to be happy with that performance, especially offensively. I think they're going to want to do a lot better tonight. So I wouldn't want to fade Houston in this spot. I wouldn't talk anyone out of Houston bets, whether it's first half, full game, team total. But Norfolk State can be a little bit of a decent underdog, and we've seen them hang in games, and that's not a bad. It's a weaker conference, the MEAC, and they're going to obviously be up against it athletically. But Norfolk State is a good MEAC, a really good MEAC team. Now they're playing Houston, so it may not matter, but that's the one hang up I have with laying this many points.
Yeah, hey, I don't blame you. They got me too. I just watch it. Last year's the season run. Sometimes they'd sleepwalk through first halves and then they blow them out seconds. I mentioned that earlier in the year, but I think they're the best team in the country, at least right now. Someone mentioned too, I wanted to touch on. You know what? I go back to Irvine, that Pepperdine game where they looked horrible. I know Pepperdine's better. I know San Diego State's coming back. You mentioned back from the tournament, so maybe they sleepwalk too. I do like Irvine. I kind of like the points with them. I haven't bet it, but I'm leaning that way tonight to maybe take them with the points. What did you like there?
That one I'm off that game. Yeah, I'm off
Yeah,
that
okay.
game, believe it or not. So I don't have anything there with Irvine and San Diego State. San Diego State's another one of those teams. Be careful laying points with them tonight. They're off the,
Yeah.
they've been in some neutral court tournaments of late. And are they going to be? So the thing is, though, Irvine was too, but especially San Diego State because they were out there in the Lahaina Civic Center out in Maui, and now you're coming back from that for your first game. That can be a little tricky. That can be a little dicey, especially when you're laying 13 like this. But I do like the Aztecs. The thing is, too, the Aztecs, though, aren't going to like their last two games. They got their ass kicked by Arizona, and then they lost in overtime. So this is not a game where they're going to take Irvine lightly. But at the same time, you worry about jet lag and all that nonsense that teams have to fight through when they're coming back from a long trip away like that. So that's why I'm staying off that game entirely there. I think that's it. Yeah, all the other questions that in that heat, I saw your question and Rocco Rogers and Aaron, we just answered your question on that San Diego State game. We pretty much talked about all the games everybody asked about. So I think we're good. I think we are ready to move to best bets, which we will do in just a few minutes. Hit the like button on the way out. If you haven't done so already, we will have our best bets to wrap up the show in just a second. But first, we'll hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. All right, Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke at Southtown 101 and manscaped.com. 20% off your purchase using promo code PUBSPORTS. All right, it is best bet time to wrap it up for a Tuesday edition of the College Basketball Net Profit Show. Conor Mack, what do you got for best bet?
Yeah, I'll just give what I already have. I bet I took Bellarmine plus 26, Old Dominion, Charleston. I got 146.5. I think 148 is still okay. I won't mind throwing that out there. And I'm on the South Florida UMass under 133. That's it.
All right, there you go. A trifecta of Tuesday best bets here for Conor Mack. Silver Malco in the chat. St. John's team total over. I would say yes to that because I like the full game over anyway. So obviously, I definitely don't mind the St. John's team total over. They actually should put up a huge number against that LIU Brooklyn team in that game. So I'm with you on the team total over there. I would agree with that. All right, but my best bet. Nice winner with Troy. Wire to wire last night against Arkansas. Hanging tough in that game. We'll see what we can come up with for an encore tonight for best bet. Let's lay 7.5 with Southern Miss against Montana. I really think Montana's in a world of hurt. I think Southern Miss is good enough to just gradually pull away and win this game by double figures. Southern Miss Golden Eagles minus 7.5 against Montana. That'll be my best bet. Honorable mention to William and Mary NC State over. I almost used that as my best bet. That's probably one of my favorite totals on the board tonight. But the official best bet will be Southern Miss minus 7.5 against Montana for my best bet on this Tuesday college basketball net profit show. All right, there we go. Great show. Thanks to Jose, as always, producing in the background. Hit the like button, everybody, on the way out. And on Pub Sports Radio tonight, we got Jimmy the Bag and Andy Molitor, Gridiron Gamblers. Don't forget about that, 8 p.m. Eastern, as they will break down the entire NFL card for the upcoming week. And we will be back with you, Conor and I, tomorrow on another edition of Net Profit at 5 p.m. Eastern. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll talk to you again tomorrow on Wednesday, once again, for another edition of Net Profit on Pub Sports Radio.